When watching Cipul Partea 1, one might at first smile at the simplicity of its premise. A rumor about microchips sparks panic in the small Romanian village of Fierbinți. But as the laughter subsides, what remains is an unsettling silence. A realization that beneath the humor lies a parable about the human spirit facing modernity. The episode transforms what could have been a light sketch into a meditation on control, individuality, and the meaning of freedom in an age when the invisible dictates our lives. The story unfolds not in grand gestures, but in murmurs and glances. The villagers gather in familiar places, speaking in circles, their words bouncing like echoes in a cave of misunderstanding. Yet in those circular conversations lies the essence of humanity, curiosity tainted by fear. The chip becomes a metaphor for all the unseen forces that shape existence: technology, politics, algorithms, destiny itself. Fierbinți, with its dusty roads and static rhythms, becomes a microcosm of the world's existential anxiety. What fascinates me is how the episode captures the spiritual texture of fear. The villagers do not fear the chip itself, they fear what it represents. The idea that something foreign could enter their bodies, their thoughts, their lives. It is the fear of penetration, of losing sovereignty over the self. In psychological terms, it mirrors humanity's timeless dread of assimilation, the loss of individuality before something too vast to understand. The rumor functions like an infection of the collective mind. It spreads without logic, but with perfect emotional resonance. The brilliance of the writers is that they never need to explain who started it. The origin is irrelevant. What matters is how quickly belief replaces truth. Watching Bobița's bar transform into the central laboratory of panic feels like observing a ritual in which words themselves become incantations. Each villager adds a fragment, a tone, an emotion, and together they summon the specter of the invisible. It is both absurd and profound. Celentano, half drunk and half prophetic, utters phrases that oscillate between nonsense and wisdom. He becomes an oracle of ignorance, articulating what others feel but cannot name. When he questions whether thoughts can be read or controlled, we laugh, yet his question resonates deeply. In a world governed by data, surveillance, and manipulation, is it still ridiculous to imagine our thoughts being monitored? His drunken soliloquy, framed by the camera's patient gaze, captures a strange poetry of confusion. The episode turns the pub into a temple of contradiction. The more the characters talk, the less they know, yet the more certain they become. Certainty, in Fierbinți, is a form of protection. Ignorance hardens into identity. The chip, like sin in religious myth, becomes an external force blamed for internal disquiet. The villagers do not ask what the chip does. They ask who planted it, who benefits, who must be resisted. It is a psychological defense mechanism against helplessness. If the world cannot be understood, it must at least have an enemy. This logic is ancient and universal. In that sense, Cipul Partea 1 transcends its setting. It is not merely about Romania. It is about the metaphysics of fear. Every civilization invents its chips, demons, plagues, conspiracies, governments. The object changes, but the mechanism remains. What makes the episode so haunting is that it unfolds in laughter. The villagers' panic never becomes tragedy, it becomes theater. Their gestures, their exaggerated facial expressions, their rapid exchanges create a choreography of absurdity that veils the depth of their pain. They are actors in a comedy about losing control, and the audience, complicit in laughter, slowly realizes it is laughing at itself. Gianni's confidence stands at the center of that irony. He speaks of technology as if it were sorcery he has mastered. He claims to know how chips work, drawing imaginary diagrams in the air, explaining signals, frequencies, transmissions. His performance is pure bravado, but behind it lies the universal human impulse to dominate what is feared. Gianni represents modern man pretending to understand the world's complexity. His false expertise mirrors our own illusion of mastery. We hold devices, scroll screens, read headlines, yet comprehension eludes us. The episode exposes that illusion without cruelty. It allows the characters to remain lovable, even as they embody humanity's collective delusion. The cinematography complements the philosophical depth of the narrative. The camera observes rather than intervenes, often framing the characters in compositions that highlight emptiness, the gap between people, the distance between speech and understanding. When the villagers huddle together discussing chips, their bodies form patterns reminiscent of medieval paintings of saints debating theology, each convinced of his version of truth. The light, soft and golden, gives their paranoia a sacred glow. The scene becomes almost religious. Fear here is faith's twin, and rumor becomes scripture. In that transformation lies the essence of the episode's symbolism. The chip is not merely technology, it is belief. It demands submission, not through evidence, but through conviction. The villagers' acceptance of the rumor mirrors how societies accept ideologies. The less tangible the threat, the more power it holds. The writers of Las Fierbinți understand that laughter can be the most effective delivery system for tragedy. The audience laughs while sensing something uneasy beneath. It is the laughter of recognition, the sound humans make when confronted with their own absurdity. Watching Cipul Partea Wai, I found myself thinking of ancient myths where gods punish mortals with knowledge they cannot handle. The chip serves the same narrative purpose. It introduces forbidden understanding. Once the villagers hear about it, they cannot return to innocence. Every itch, every sound, every flicker of light becomes suspect. In psychological terms, the rumor redefines perception. Reality becomes filtered through anxiety. The episode captures this metamorphosis with remarkable precision. Ordinary gestures, scratching one's neck, adjusting a collar, become signs of contamination. The humor arises not from stupidity, but from overinterpretation. It's the same phenomenon that governs modern conspiracy cultures, where every coincidence becomes proof. By reducing it to a rural microdrama, the show exposes the universal mechanism with empathy. What fascinates me most is how the episode turns technological paranoia into a spiritual allegory. The villagers fear losing control of their bodies, but what they truly fear is losing their souls. The chip, as a symbol, fuses material and metaphysical dread. It represents the invasion of modernity into the sacred space of identity. Fierbinți is not ready for the invisible world of data and machines, just as humanity itself was never ready for the invisible world of gods. In both cases, faith replaces knowledge, and emotion replaces logic. The brilliance of Cipul Partea Wai lies in showing that these replacements are not failures, but coping mechanisms. The villagers do not seek truth, they seek meaning, and meaning, unlike truth, is negotiable. Celentano's speeches may be incoherent, but they give the group a language for their fear. That language unites them. The pub becomes a confessional, where anxiety turns into laughter, and laughter into belonging. The chip rumor thus serves a paradoxical purpose. It divides them from the modern world, but binds them to one another. Sociologically, the episode becomes an essay on community. In cities, fear isolates. In villages, fear connects. When Bobica teases the others or invents products to exploit the situation, he is not merely mocking them. He is performing a ritual of control. By turning fear into commerce, he neutralizes it. Humor, money, and gossip become tools of survival. This insight, subtle yet profound, explains why the episode resonates beyond its comic surface. It shows that even absurdity can be adaptive. The character's ridiculousness hides a quiet intelligence, the instinct to convert chaos into routine. The more they talk about chips, the less power the rumor has over them. Through repetition, they domesticate the unknown. The directing mirrors this rhythm. Scenes are built like loops, each returning to the same theme with slight variations like prayers. This structure reinforces the sense that the villagers are not progressing toward resolution, but circling around an idea too large to grasp. The absence of a clear ending is not a flaw. It is the point. The story refuses closure because modern fear never ends. There is always another chip, another rumor, another unseen force. The episode thus functions as a cycle of existential comedy, eternally repeating itself wherever humans gather to make sense of mystery. The philosophical dimension deepens when we consider how Chip-ul Partea Wayain reflects on the human relationship with technology. The villagers represent a consciousness unprepared for abstraction. For them, reality is tactile: soil, food, bodies, weather. When something invisible intrudes, a signal, a frequency, a chip, it defies the senses. The episode dramatizes the collision between the physical and the virtual. Modern technology exists everywhere and nowhere. The villagers' inability to comprehend it mirrors our collective condition. Even the most educated among us trust systems we do not truly understand. We use technology like magic, with faith and superstition. The villagers' panic is simply a more honest version of our own. The soundscape reinforces this thematic layer. The faint buzzing of fluorescent lights, the static from the radio, the barking of distant dogs, all contribute to an atmosphere of unseen presence. The world hums with invisible energy. At times, it feels as though the chip already exists, not in their bodies but in their environment. The line between imagination and reality dissolves. When night falls, shadows stretch longer and conversations slow down. The episode enters a metaphysical mood. It is no longer about what is real, but what is believed. In that silence, the laughter of earlier scenes lingers like a memory of innocence. The audience feels nostalgia for a simpler ignorance. The villagers, having tasted modern fear, can never return. That loss of innocence is the true tragedy of the episode, hidden beneath comedy. I found this duality deeply moving because it mirrors the evolution of humanity itself. We laugh at the villagers because we see in them our ancestors and our future selves. The same curiosity that once lit fires and built cities now feeds algorithms and rumors alike. The chip becomes the symbol of knowledge's double edge. It liberates and enslaves. In the village of Fierbinți, knowledge arrives stripped of understanding, and thus it wounds. Yet the episode refuses despair. It ends not with defeat, but with the gentle persistence of life. The next morning, the villagers will wake up, argue again, and perhaps forget the chip. Fear fades as quickly as it spreads. This cyclical resilience is the final message. Ignorance can be painful, but it also protects. The human mind cannot bear the full weight of complexity. It survives through simplification. The laughter in Chip-ul Partea Wayain is not mockery but mercy. It forgives confusion. It transforms vulnerability into warmth. From a symbolic standpoint, the episode reads almost like a parable about creation. The villagers invent the chip story just as early humans invented gods, to explain the unexplainable. The moment they do, they create a narrative universe. Within that fiction, they find order. The power of Las Fierbinți lies in showing that storytelling itself is salvation. The chip is only the latest myth in humanity's long history of imagining control where none exists. In the end, what remains is the image of a small community huddled together, laughing at their own fear. The camera captures them in a long, tender shot, framed by the fading light of evening. They are fragile, foolish, and magnificent. They remind us that wisdom often hides inside stupidity, that truth can wear the mask of a joke. Chipul, partea a Y, asks a simple yet eternal question. How does one live in a world one cannot understand? The villager's answer is laughter. Ours should be gratitude, for their laughter reveals our own reflection, raw and unguarded. Watching the episode feels like looking into a mirror that exaggerates yet clarifies. It invites humility. It suggests that perhaps the real chip has been implanted not by governments or scientists, but by fear itself. It whispers that modernity's invisible invasion is not technological, but emotional. The chip is not in the body, it is in the soul. And maybe, just maybe, the only cure is to keep laughing together in the dark.